Here are your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Bloody Water Podcast. UFC 290 delivered and more. International Fight Week was capped off with Upset City, new champions, and then a champion that we know and love, Alexandre Volkanovski, proven to everybody. This guy might not just be the best fighter in the featherweight division, might not just be the greatest fighter we've seen in the featherweight division, some would argue. But we need to start talking about through and through as a fighter. Is this the best guy that we've seen? And bringing it in, my co-host, the Santa Fe Bomber, the New Mexico native. AJ, that's my first question to you. Alexandre Volkanovski looks like he's on a completely another level. Is this truly the case? Are we talking about greatest of all time type history, or is it too early to pull that trigger?
Derek, I'm glad you opened up with this because that was the rumblings at the table at the bar I was at last night when we were watching the fight. It's hard to deny Volkanovski as being the GOAT, nonetheless, of the featherweight division, but all around. This guy, he's down to accept any fight, anytime. It's hard to say it, especially due track record alone. And for a long time, even yours truly doubted Volkanovski. It's hard to say, Derek. It's hard to not give him GOAT status, especially above, across the board GOAT status. I wouldn't say he's all time, but he's right there chomping at the heels. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're very hyperbolic when we talk about things the night after a dominant performance, right? But I think at the end of the day, he has earned the right to, I think, go back up to lightweight and try to chase that belt again. And if he's successful this time, that's when we need to start talking about stuff like that. Then again, you do got Johnny Bones Jones, who is multiple division champion, just the best to do it. That's the GOAT right there. But that's neither here nor there. AJ, real quick, I want to be retrospective before we jump into the fights. This was a all-time card. I feel like this was one of those cards where if you were lucky enough to actually get to go in person, you were probably going to be talking about this for a long time. Even though we had like the Jack Della Maddalena fight fall off, we had crazy upsets. We had, Dricus Du Plessis, man, you know what I'm saying, making his name on Robert Whittaker. Just overall, watching the card, did it feel special to you? Did it feel like another run-of-the-mill card? I mean, what's the vibes?
It felt like a classic International Fight Week card there. We talked about it in the pre-show. There's something to it when all these stars are getting together, everybody's coming together. There's stuff that happens, and I think this card was a great example of that because of all the upsets. It's the finishes, the turning lines, the stories that are being told. It felt like a great card. You said it when the mics were still cold, but this you did get your money's worth with this fight card. It was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun to watch. Even being wrong on some of those picks, it's good to see.
And speaking of that, clearly, folks, if you're watching, you can see in the bottom right corner, winner of the week, my man AJ. He squeaked out a close one, but it costs to be the boss, and it costs to take a risk. Sometimes it benefits you. So when we pull this up, as you can see, Bloody Water Podcast consensus picks did not do too hot this go around. We went 1-2 on the night, but I want you to take a look on the right side of the screen. Alexandre Pantoja, my man AJ, he predicted it. He went Mystic Mac for a second. And he said, you know what? Out of all of the upsets on this card, I think Pantoja is the one. I know you feel vindicated and validated now, but what really made you go? I know we talked about it on the pre-show, but reaffirm. Why did you go Pantoja?
Sometimes the guy has your number, and even though we knew this was going to be a close fight, I think Pantoja, there's something about it, man. Honestly, Derek, I couldn't precisely say, but it was one of those moments where I felt like, damn, something's here. Something's going on here. And shout out to my homie Scott, man, called me right before the fight out there in Vegas. Pretty sure he's in Vegas right now, betting on the fights. Yes, who should I bet on this one? I told him, safe money, you got to run with Brandon Moreno, but if you're looking to make some cash, Pantoja's the one to get it done. Shout out to my boy Scott, wants some money out there.
And that's what I'm saying, folks. Courtesy here of the Bloody Water Podcast, whether you're rolling with my pips, rolling with AJ's picks, it doesn't matter as long as you win some money. That's what we're talking about right here. And then to go from a high note, we do need to address a little bit of a low note here today, AJ. This does not look very good. I do not like looking at this screen and seeing a ton of red, but you did hit on one, and that was the Bo Nickal TKO. Now, that fight did not go as I expected, but when we're seeing now, obviously short notice replacement and all that, when you go and you're just completely worried about a takedown from Bo Nickal, he's showing now, I got hands too. I'll knock you out. I mean, is the trajectory for Bo Nickal going as planned? Is this going better than planned? What do you
think? I think it's going just a little under plan, if you will, Derek. The way with everybody falling out on him, not really finding well, like high name value targets, if you will. I think everybody expected him to do this, so it gave him a little bump and it gave him a little shine, but it wasn't necessarily if he would have had, name recognition against Val Woodburn. So that's why I'm saying a little under plan, if you will. But it's hard to deny, bro. Bo has been getting finishes in the ring, and man, he's been fighting nothing but up from here on out.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is going as planned, because when you're minus 2,800 favorite and you get your opponent out of there in like 30 seconds, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You know what I mean? So right as planned, not above, not under. I think we're just kind of right there. You can't, it's not his fault that people pull out, right? You just fight whoever's in front of you. So it is what it is. And with that being said, folks, enough retrospection. If you have not subscribed yet, we already hit 610 followers, 610 subscribers here on YouTube. We're going nowhere but up. Subscribe. You know what time it is. All right, folks, let's talk about some title fights, baby.
Have you seen that replay, buddy? Your head was bouncing around like a pinball machine.
Time for some main card breakdown, courtesy of your hosts, Derick G and AJ. All right, AJ, Alexander Volkanovski dominated Yair Rodriguez. We said the striking would be real tricky. We thought that the unorthodox and the unpredictable angles would lead to openings that he'd be able to exploit on. And while he did have a couple of moments, a couple flashes in the pan, exactly what we had touched on kind of came to fruition. Alexander Volkanovski is too good at neutralizing your game plan and taking you to a place in the fight where you cannot be effective, and he could rain down his supremacy. He did so. He looks like a world beater. He's at the top of the division. What is next for Alexander Volkanovski?
I think he has to go up to that 155-pound belt, Derek. I mean, what else in the division? He's wiped out everybody else. Another greatest of all time to do it, Max Holloway, beating him 3 times, whether you want to argue it or not. But on paper, those are dubs. There's nothing else left for him in the division. He has to go up. He has to reclaim or at least justify that Islam fight. Because, again, everybody at the table I was at was agreeing. They thought Volk won that Islam fight. So I think this is a big push to be seeing another star in the making, a massive star. And you know what did it for me, Derek? What really shocked me and really solidified where I see Volk's growth was the footwork this guy had. Because we were talking about the Yair footwork and the Yair wildness he has. And Volk able to match it and output it was absolutely impressive. What do you think, Derek? There's no other shot besides 155. Obviously, Islam, that's kind of where everybody's eyes are headed to. Do you see another path that leads him to that same caliber of greatness going forward?
Yeah, I think he needs to keep smashing the guys in his division until there's literally nobody else. Ilia Topuria is over here saying, hey, you want to take the easy way, you want to fight Makhachev, which I'm not sure how that's the easy way, but it's like, you want to take the easy way, you don't want to fight me. Well, if you put yourself in a position like Amanda Nunes or Valentina Shevchenko, where you literally cleared everybody out and now they're scraping and searching and digging to find an opponent for you, then you can gracefully say, I have nothing left for this division. Until you find me a new suitable challenger, I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. Right. But until that moment happens and until you get to that Shevchenko level where you're 7 title defenses, right? This was the 7th title fight in a row for Volkanovski. I believe this was the 5th defense. Legendary, but there's still a couple names above you. Nunes, Shevchenko that are out there actually, getting those defenses, at least at one point were. Now, I do think Makhachev is going to be a fun fight in terms of a rematch there. But let's just say this, AJ. What if Volk goes out there and what if he loses that fight again? You went up for the big leagues twice, you get shut down. I mean, you have to come back to featherweight and you have to keep doing it. So do you think that the division will develop itself a new suite of challengers for him? Excuse me, or do you think that it's just going to be the same old story that we hear for all of these other divisions?
Man, I'm hoping there's a new storyline being told. I actually like the Ilia Topuria fight a lot more because it kind of reinvigorates that thing. And Ilia, as much as he is, kind of in the limelight, this dude's been grinding for a while, so he does deserve the shot. And there's new talent going to be coming in for the 145-pound class that's able to grow that kind of division. But again, at the same point, we need to see a little bit more shakeup because we're drawing one name right now. A couple names in there are really need to really start making some moves to start clamoring for the division, because other than that, it seems like another stagnant division, which is one of the most, besides 155, one of the hardest and scariest classes to be in. But there's so many people, but very few that are actually at that upper echelon.
Well, let's not forget, we do have names like Aljamain Sterling, who is promising to come up to 145 to fight Alexander Volkanovski after his fight with Sean O'Malley, depending on how that goes, of course. And then, we'll just see how everything else shakes out. But let's talk about Yair Rodriguez a little bit. once again, man, I don't say any of this to be like the told you so's or any of that stuff, but I did kind of point out like, hey, look at who he fought to get to this title, and they've claimed him as the big scary boogeyman. And now that he has kind of been, how would you say, just kind of smothered out, man. Volkanovski said, nah, you're not really that much of a challenge. Is that where we're at with like these contenders right here, where you fight a guy or two and you're immediately title contention? Like, do you see what I was talking about now in hindsight more than, when we were speaking about it originally?
Storyline, Derek. Storyline is one of the big things that drives the casuals to the UFC. A lot of people hate the comparison UFC to WWE, but there are similarities because storyline needs to be played, and storyline sells the bills, gets the people's asses in the seats. And I agree with you. The Yair Rodriguez storyline seemed very dense. Turns out to be a little bit more fluffy than we would have liked, and it got exposed a little bit by Volkanovski with the ground game he had and the game plan going into it. So that's why I'm glad you always pointed out, Derek, because storyline can get your picks going wrong in the UFC because they're great at it. They're a machine, one of the best to ever do it. And you can start thinking like, damn, Yair really is the dog. This dude's been coming up from the ground up, knocking people out left and right, kicks like crazy. But Volkanovski, forget, he's also been doing the exact same thing in a different fashion. So I agree. I think the storyline here, again, another week of it being exposed for what it is. Yep. And that's kind of the problem we were talking about with the Ilia Topuria thing. Like, are we going to be hyping up his thing next as the guy, or is this a true dog coming for the scraps?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I think the other punctuation there is that when the UFC gives you a fancy custom Mexican interim champion belt and all that, it also adds a little more to that. So you're thinking, oh, they're setting everything up for this guy, right? You got to imagine Volkanovski's probably feeling away too. He's like, oh, you giving it? Where's my Australia belt? You know what I'm saying? But that's neither here nor there. Big win by Alexander the Great Volkanovski. We'll see what's next. Now, AJ, man, this co-main event, bro, this could have been the main event right here. This was a instant classic right here. This was fight of the night, in my opinion. I haven't looked at what the performance awards are, but this could be a fight of the year contender as well. Brandon Moreno, Alexandre Pantoja, they were bloodied. It was a war. They gave it everything they got. And then at this point, you really just got to think about, like, what exactly does Moreno need to do to get a win against Pantoja? Like, 3 times you couldn't get it. From here, what could he have done different to actually solidify a win versus a close split decision loss?
I think it's rough, Derek, because that last fourth round and fifth round, it was really the control that took over. One of the big debates at the table was Pantoja, with all the control he had, did zero damage. There's nothing real damage going on. But to that same argument, neither did Moreno because he was being controlled. So there's no damage going on. So I think if Moreno really needed to get it back, because with each fight he's grown in leaps and bounds to get better. Started off with the finish, or started off getting finished, then going to a decision, unanimous. Now it's a split. You're right there. If Moreno, and it's almost like a catch-22, Derek, because if Moreno could have put himself in just a little bit more danger, willing to kind of, I don't know, like I said, put yourself in the position that's going to kind of excite Pantoja to allow him to overextend or something like that. As dangerous that is, it seems that's the only shot because Pantoja, this dude's a dog. And for all the times that Moreno cracked him heavy, he was still standing there. Yeah, he was wobbled a couple times. There were moments, man. This was such a close fight, Derek. Back and forth, washing machine style fight. This could have been, and if not fight of the night, this definitely could have been. But for Moreno to put himself in those kind of situations, is it worth it? Because you're already losing anyway. But, is it worth it to go out on your shield like that? Or, because there is a world where Moreno actually won that fight, and that's why it was a split decision. I didn't think so. I thought the right man won, but there is a world where the judges give that fight to Moreno. Do you see another option, and do you agree with that last statement of there's a world where Moreno won this fight?
No, I don't, man. I think the right guy won. I think Pantoja did exactly what he needed to do to win. I think this is what it comes down to. There is some psychology that plays into it, especially when you've been finished by your opponent before, especially when you got to those positions where he has your back, rear naked choke, where you pull the Dustin Poirier approach, right? So remember Dustin Poirier, I think it was against Khabib, but he was all like, I'm just going to let you ride out the round, bro, because if I make a bad move, I'm going to get finished here. And it's better to lose a round than it is to get finished. However, those moments came in like round 4 and 5. So it's like there's no time. You can't just lose the round. You can't just hope and pray you'll get the win. You have to do something. So when it's equal in damage and then Pantoja controls you for 3 minutes, you got to give it to Pantoja, right? I think the biggest concern for me is that Brandon Moreno felt the power of Pantoja, obviously, in those exchanges, and I think that's why he didn't want to go in there towards the latter end of the fight and just put it all on the line, because if he gets starched, then it's all over. And Pantoja, for whatever reason, dude is like a Terminator, bro. I know he's the cannibal, but like he got hit with everything and the kitchen sink and just kept going, looked tired as ever. They were calling him tired at round 2, bro. Looked exhausted the entire fight and still did exactly what you mentioned, AJ. Brought the dog out, said there is a will to win that has not been extinguished here. And he got it done, bro. I mean, there couldn't have been a more impressive way to win this fight, unless he just steamrolled him, correct?
Correct, but almost, Derek, this was more impressive because he had to pull out the dog, because he had to dig deep to really go in and get this win and do the things necessary to solidify the win. And man, that's why I was in awe of this fight. This was one of those ones, yeah, I scored it, but I was also just happy to sit back, watch, not say a word, and just be in awe of two dudes giving their full effort in this at all, man. So nothing against Moreno. Great fight for both of them. Super close as well, man.
And I think that this actually is the best thing for Pantoja going into his first title defense, because at this point, no matter if they give him Moreno or they give him somebody else, you're not going to question anymore, oh, Pantoja, he's not a 5-round guy. He's not made for championship fights. We just saw this dude will drag you into deep waters for all 5 rounds. Is that sustainable over the course of your career, though? I'm not sure how sustainable fights like this are, right? You don't want to get in this type of just straight up brawl every time, but Pantoja excels in brawls. We have a new king of the flyweight division, and before we leave off on this one, AJ, I just want to know, how do you feel that Pantoja said something pretty meaningful at the end of the fight? And he did a little shout out, said, hey, Dad, you proud of me now, right? This is a grown man with a family. I think he got kids and everything, right? To have that level of introspection on the grandest stage in front of everybody right here, you'd imagine that this title is not going to be leaving this man's hands for quite some time when you have that level of emotion attached to it to a degree. Would you agree with that, or is that far-fetched?
No, Derek, I would 100% agree with that. You can see it meant something to him more than just goals that he's been, aiming towards. This was family, this was friends, this was love, this was a lot of things that go into it. And I at first, when I saw the post fight, he was talking about Dad and all that stuff. Then this morning I was going through Twitter scrolling, and I see a video of Triple C giving him pre-fight, giving him a card, talking about, for a guy that grew up, lost your father, all this stuff, you were an amazing father, going to be soon champ. So you can tell, not only did this mean so much to him and his family, but also everybody around that area, everybody around that had some sort of emotional connection to Pantoja knew how much this meant to him. And even though we might see some shuffle up, I think Pantoja is going to do everything in his power, regardless, to stay champ and do that, because it means so much to him.
Alexandre Pantoja, and you got a new face in this division. We got a new king on the throne. Should be interesting to see what plays out after this. AJ, I have a bold statement. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if they say bandwagon or not. Dricus Du Plessis just did something to Robert Whittaker that nobody does, right? Yoel Romero could hardly keep Robert Whittaker down. Du Plessis took him down with ease. Israel Adesanya had wars. Romero had wars. They couldn't get that man out of there. Well, Israel Adesanya could, right? But that's neither here nor there. The point is, Dricus Du Plessis, outside of anybody else that's not champion named Israel Adesanya, he's the number 1 contender. I don't care what anybody says. He has shown time and time again, we keep saying he's not going to win, and he keeps winning, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not, this is the number 1 guy in the middleweight division. Agree or no?
Agreed, Derek. DDP, I'm glad they gave him that name too, because I feel like now he does deserve a solid nickname, DDP. I'm pretty sure Uncle Chael classified it, but either way, man, Du Plessis earned and fought tooth and nail for the spot that he feels like he deserved, and it's hard to deny him, Derek, because like you said, a normal statement, or like a consistent statement felt by the fan base is that if Israel Adesanya was not here, Robert Whittaker would be champ. Well, turns out Du Plessis finished him in two rounds, less than 10 minutes. Like, god damn, bro, this was crazy to see. And probably, but there was one other fight that kind of shocked me a little bit more, but not so much because there's a guy in the dog. We'll talk about it in a second. But this fight, man, proved a lot of people wrong and had a lot of jaws on the floor. It's hard to deny Du Plessis that this guy is the real deal. I'm excited for the fight coming soon. We'll see, Derek. What do you give Du Plessis? Are you putting any stake into the fact that what he did to Robert Whittaker, or are we still counting him out against the Israel Adesanya fight? Because at the table, a lot of people were saying he's going to get smashed by Izzy coming up next. What do you think?
Well, we said the same exact thing for Robert Whittaker, man, and he dropped him with the jab. He dropped him with the jab, bro. You know, like, this dude has just this weird style of fight, right? Got a lot of power, a lot of cardio, and the thing that I had mentioned, I felt like kind of came to fruition, right? Like, it's not always the technical guy that wins. I'm really going to touch on that in a prelim fight right here, but it's not the technical guy that always wins, and Du Plessis has an extra intangible, which he has that will to win. He has that desire to win, that burning passion to win. I'm not saying Whittaker doesn't have that, but it is difficult when you're lining up, you know, fight after fight after fight after fight. There's this new guy, he wants what I have, I'm not going to let him take it. Well, Du Plessis, to him, he said, this is a title fight to me, bro. Like, this isn't just another run-of-the-mill fight. So I think everything goes back to when we were kind of going back and forth over the prompt of, what is Whittaker fighting for? And I think that we just found out this weekend that while he was fighting to defend his rank, right, to stop the guy from taking what was his, you can only do it for so long, bro. And Whittaker, I don't know, did it feel like an off night, or is this 100% Dricus Du Plessis is the man?
That's interesting, Derek, because I did think it felt like an off night. Robert Whittaker didn't even throw his classic right-hand head kick. Like, he did not do the kind of things we expect him to see. He looked calm, though, and especially in the beginning, opening first round, he was bouncing. He had the classic Bobby Knuckles look to him. But then it seemed like Dricus Du Plessis had just a half step, just slightly faster, slightly more intuitive on reading things and seeing things come in just a split second before Robert Whittaker would. So is that an off night? I don't know, Derek. It really, you can see the moment or the build that Dricus Du Plessis had that kind of started to crush the spirit of Robert Whittaker. And then he's really started kind of falling back and taking the second step, you know, not leading the dance anymore, allowing Dricus Du Plessis to fight his kind of fight. And you're right, that step-in jab that DDP had, beautiful. Not many people get dropped with the jab, but the fact that Dricus has that kind of explosive tendency, that blitz that's blitzing against Robert Whittaker's blitz, beautiful timing, beautiful to see. I would say a little off night for Bobby Knuckles, but again, age comes into play. What are you fighting for comes into play. You're punching the nose, bleeding, you can't breathe. Do you really want to be here anymore? This guy seems to be the guy. I don't know, Derek, would you say it was an off night?
It's tough to say, man. I can only say one thing for sure, and that's that it doesn't matter if it was an off night or not, but Dricus Du Plessis literally did everything he needed to do to solidify a fight against Israel Adesanya, and then that's what we need to talk about next. Adesanya comes into the cage, and, you know, listen, man, he knows how to build a fight, right? So they're building off of the African contention right there. My brother, but not really my brother, and all types of expletives and all types of craziness, right? But I think the thing that you have to take away from this is the most out of character we've kind of ever seen Israel Adesanya, at least in public, right? And that doesn't really matter to me because, like I said, this is building a fight. Like, Dana White said it himself. Like, why are y'all tripping, bro? Like, this is the fight business. They're going to punch each other in the face. Who cares if they say bad words to each other? But this was the thing. And Du Plessis brought up a good point. He was like, isn't it normally the challenger that is supposed to come and storm the cage, right? Isn't it normally that? So that goes to show Adesanya is already looking at me as a real threat. And I was like, okay. I never, maybe it's a reach, right? Maybe it's a reach. But the point of, if Adesanya acted the most out of character against anybody that we've seen, maybe he literally is saying, oh, you just did that to Bobby Knuckles. I remember those wars that I've been in with him. I remember those close fights, and you starched them? All right, now you showed me something. Now I have to, off with your head. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the mentality coming at it. Personally, did you read anything else off of that, or...
It's an interesting one, Derek, because I think this is it may be out of character for Israel Adesanya, but this was the most we've seen him upset and mad at somebody. Usually, it's business as usual. Even with the Paeta fights, it was like, yeah, I don't like this dude, but I know what I need to do to get things done. He's never been as animated or as, like you said, expletive. It seems like Israel Adesanya was really offended by the comments that DDP made. And rightfully so. Somebody challenges your heritage. Somebody challenges shit. Somebody's coming at New Mexico, dog. We scrapping. So same thing for Israel Adesanya. It seems like this is a little bit of an emotionally driven instance. And we all know when you're going into a fight emotionally driven, it's one of the worst things you can do. Not saying he's going to do that, Derek. Not saying he's going to be ill prepared or in an ill mindset going into the fight. But it seems like there's a lot behind this one that really does it. So I believe it was a mix of that. A mix of, bro, you were talking shit. You talk shit, get hit. This was going to happen. Yeah. But also, Israel Adesanya is the consummate professional and entertainer. So he knows how to drum up and get that stir going. Another one of the best ways to do it, man. Have a you side versus my side, even though we're both from the same area. It's a storyline that I think Israel Adesanya is smart for attacking. Nonetheless, he's obviously mad at it.
Yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, nothing matters more than building up the fight. That's where asses in seats, dollars in your pocket. But I will say this. The best thing that Robert Whittaker can hope for at this point is that Du Plessis upsets Adesanya. So that I think that's his only shot, bro, at touching that title again. There's no shot. This was the worst thing that could have happened, honestly. Like, he said he's taking everything I worked for, and he took it. And it's like, God. Big win by Dricus Du Plessis, still knocks, man. South Africa is a contender in the middleweight division right there. And then, AJ, you wanted to talk about dogs. We're going to talk about a dog right here, a dog that you should never count out, man. You can never count out any of these guys. We had mentioned on the pre-show, the COVID era was bad to Dan Hooker, right? But who does he lose to? He's lost to all the best guys. In respect of a division, it's all the best guys. He comes in against Jalin Turner, who I consider to be one of the best guys, regardless of ranking. And there's some things we can't prepare for. AJ Turner missed weight. We have no idea what was going on behind the scenes. Dan Hooker goes in there, almost gets finished, but that's when the best Dan Hooker comes out. And he came on and he says, listen, bro, I'm a dog. I'm going to get the best of this dog fight here. And then I broke my arm mid-fight, but 'tis a scratch. No big deal. Still split decision, big victory by the hangman Dan Hooker. How impressed were you? And did you really think he would pull this one out?
Derek, this in the last segment we were just talking about, this is the fight I was saying that was the most shocking to me, but also the most exciting way to see a fighter kind of grow mid-fight. And we talked about in the pre-show, Dan Hooker is a lot of things, and he used to be this kind of formidable, unbreakable will. Like he was down to sit in scraps and find his ways to win. But there was a time during the COVID era where he was getting knocked out. He kind of has that slunched over, like everything rolls and he starts turtling up, and that's usually the beginning of the end for Dan Hooker. Almost happened. Round 2, Jalin Turner's kind of putting it on. And then you see, I believe it was an upper. I forget exactly what Dan Hooker dropped Jalin Turner with. And then the momentum rolled. And then things start turning. Dan Hooker, his eyes get a little wider. He starts breathing a little better. And that was the old Dan Hooker we were used to seeing. This guy stepped on the gas, bit down on the mouthpiece and said, come take it. And this was so impressive, Derek. And because I did not think he was going to be able to dig deep like that. There's so many past fights that we've seen where it looks like he quits on himself, or at least he looks like he's just not ready for the moment. This was one of those ones where it's kind of headed in that direction. And Dan Hooker said, nah, fuck that. We rolling, we riding. This is how we fight. Sure enough, bro, showed up. This was a very impressive and kind of like a enjoyable, rejoiceful win, if you will, for the Dan Hooker fans, because he needed this one bad. If not, tell me not. You could see Dan Hooker maybe not getting cut, but getting closer to that chopping block going forward. Were you as impressed as I was, Derek?
I was more impressed. I think I was much more impressed. The reason why is because Dan Hooker is your consummate gunslinger, bro. This is the guy who is the wild, wild west. Let's go out and let's bang. I know Jalin Turner is a big, bad, scary man, but that's what motivates me to get out there and give it my all, right? So tonight it felt like, I don't remember who exactly said it. I think it was Daniel Cormier, but he says, listen, man, there are no fairy tale endings in MMA. And that was my whole entire perspective coming into this one. This is fairy tale, not an ending, but this is a fairy tale moment for Dan Hooker. We'll talk about Robbie Lawler in a second, which I'm going to have to give a big apology to, because that was another fairy tale ending that never happens in this sport, but he got it done. But this is the whole entire point, man. Dan Hooker, no matter what you think, he is an OG of the game. He was the Jalin Turner before Jalin Turner, right? He was the big, long, lanky guy, dangerous knees, elbows, everything. And I think that what we saw here was not just a resurgence of what Dan Hooker was. I think this was also a, listen, young buck, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's levels to this thing right here, and I know you're a big bag bully and you beat up everybody, but once you see you can't bully me, everything shifted. And I think that's what we saw, man. But AJ, we have to address, and we'll move on because we don't need to linger too much. Jalin Turner missed weight, 2 pounds, man. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And when I saw that, that was the first hunch that I had where, this might not go as planned, right? Something might be off. Do you factor any of that into this one, or are you just calling it a clean win by the Hangman?
No, I do weigh that in a little bit, Derek, especially because when Jalin Turner was at the scale, yeah, he missed it by 2 pounds, but he also looked drained. He looked depleted. He looked a skeleton of himself. It'd be interesting to have that one. Right when he missed weight, he put up the tweet that there should be a 165-pound class with the people that are too small to make 170 or too big to make 155. It'd be an interesting one, but again, does that go into the mentality of Jalin Turner? Like, man, I had this. I lost against the scale, lost the first fight. There's a lot that goes into that, but I still don't take anything away from Dan Hooker.
That's right. Big win by the Hangman. We'll see what's next in the 155-pound division for Dan Hooker. And then to open us off, Bo Nickal opened up as like a minus 2,800 favorite. Val Woodburn, formidable, right? You got an opportunity, and this is what we always say, just give it your best because this was your shot. It's short notice. You have nothing to lose, literally, at this point. And he goes in, swings some big bombs, and Bo Nickal says, I'm not going to rush in and take you down. I'm just going to clip you on the outside. And he put my man to bed real quick. It wasn't unexpected. Everyone pretty much expected this, but I think the part that people are going to realize now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, Bo Nickal's already shown it before. He's got hands. He can knock you out. And if you're too worried about the takedown, you're going to get slept. So to me, I know it's slow and steady build with these guys that aren't the highest name value, but I think that he is developing his repertoire. You got to remember, this dude is now 5-0 in MMA, not just the UFC, MMA. I mean, what do you make of this performance?
Yeah, Derek, this is one of those ones that it's I can see a lot of people kind of not giving Bo Nickal the full credit he deserves. Oh, short notice replacement, got in the first time of the UFC. Like, there's a lot of things. He was just swinging big bombs. Of course, you were going to win this fight. You were the biggest favorite ever. Of course, blah, blah, blah. So I can see where a lot of people would kind of cut Bo Nickal's talents short on this one. But like you said, Derek, no longer just the wrestler. And I believe it was an Uncle Chael story I was listening to where he's talking Bo Nickal's still wrestling every single day. So those skills he has are staying well-tuned, staying sharpened, staying ready for war. But now we just saw he also can dig in and pull out some hammers out of that toolbox and get to work on the feet. Yeah. Next, I'm excited to see how he handles that moment of adversity where his back's on the mat. He's no longer the hammer. He's got to be the nail. How does he fight as the nail against, arguably, they have to give him a big name that hopefully won't fall out. Like you said, not Bo Nickal's fault that people are falling out for him, but it does leave the door open to a little bit of criticism of, oh, you're not beating anybody well-known. You're no notoriety here. Who's this guy really talking about? I guarantee that'll probably be a thing his next opponent says. So let's see. Let's pay attention. Do you have an X factor that opponent can bring to the table that you see is going to stop Bo Nickal in the future, or is it just riding high to the top?
Yeah, I think not even somebody who's going to put him on his back, but just somebody who's a classic sprawl and brawl guy, a classic you're not going to take me down and I'm going to force you to fight me 15 minutes. I think once we start seeing that against the higher level opposition, we'll know what Bo Nickal's game is really made of, because that's when guys panic, when their bread and butter doesn't work anymore. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't really have a plan B. So let's figure it out. But right now, you can expect most likely a quick turnaround for Bo Nickal. He did 10 weeks for this camp, didn't really get touched at all. So, I mean, you would imagine he's probably back before the end of the year. I don't see why not. Probably 2-3 months. But we'll see. Big win by Bo Nickal. And AJ, there's some action-packed prelims that we definitely need to talk about here. So the first fight that I need to talk about here is going to be the apology tour for my man, Robbie Ruthless Lawler. He does something that, once again, just nobody does. That's why everyone was so surprised. That's why it was such a moment, right? Because it was like everything aligned. You came in there, you showed some emotion for the first time. You're like, who's this guy showing emotion? That's not Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler's a robot. You go in there, NIckal Price says, I'm going to go and I'm going to deliver for the fans. This is going to be a war. Bro, he got that tie clinch, perfectly placed uppercut to the chin, left hook to the temple, and NIckal Price was out, and that was all she wrote. And then Robbie Lawler just with the hands up, this is what I do, baby. They showed him his retirement montage, and he went off into the sunset. You could not literally write a better storybook ending than that. So with that being said, apologies to the Ruthless One. I should have never doubted you, but you pulled off a historic feat that I don't think that we will see again, personally. What do you think?
This is a funny one, Derek, because as much as this seems to be the storybook ending, the perfect way, didn't get touched. What was it? 40-second knockout against a savage of NIckal Price. I feel like the Ruthless One kind of wanted to go out in a war. He wanted the blood. So it almost felt like it happened. The knockout happened. He was like, like, damn it. I kind of wanted to bleed a little bit, bro. Like, let me run another one. Let me get back in here. So that right there was an interesting feel, but then, the video hit, the emotions hit, Robbie kind of had that introspection level that we all saw. So you could tell this was a good one. And again, storybook ending, you can't ask for it any better unless you have the belt in hand. But for a guy that has been doing it since day one, man, this is a great win and a beautiful thing to see for the Ruthless Robbie Lawler. I was happy to see it, but again, I think we would have all enjoyed a war, but you love to see Robbie Lawler get a last dub.
This is what I'll say, man. If history repeats itself at all, then we do have to take into account that we might see Robbie Lawler come back. Remember Matt Brown dropped that beautiful elbow, that elbow on Diego Sanchez and retired? And then he was like, bro, that was too good of a win to retire on. Like, I got to come back. I feel good. You just starched NIckal Price. That is not a very easily starchable man. You did it in record time. We might see Robbie Lawler back. I hope we do not, because, like I said, there's no better way to end it than this way. But listen, a win is a win is a win, and Robbie Lawler retires on top, at least, perspective-wise for his situation. Big win. Tatsuro Taira, AJ, my man, minus 1,000 favorite against Edgar Chairez. And let's just say this fight did not live up to the potential of what a minus 1,000 favorite is supposed to do. Chairez is a old, crafty veteran, and he made it known in there. What'd you make of this one? I feel like Taira kind of dropped the ball, but then again, he won, so it's hard to argue. What do you think?
He won, but Derek, I agree with you in the fact that he dropped the ball because he exposed himself in the stand-up. He exposed that he's a lot more comfortable on the ground. He's a specialist for a reason, and there's ways out there to make him not fight the fight he wants to have. And again, like you said, Chairez knows how to kind of twist and turn those angles to be able to have the moments that are better for him. Again, I made Tatsuro Taira a sleeper a long time ago. I thought this dude was going to be one of the ones coming up. And as good as he is on the ground, we saw him look a little sluggish, look a little overextending on the punches. The combos weren't as crisp as we were hoping for. But if this guy, what does he have? I forget how old Taira is. But if he's able to, 23, this guy's a lot of room to grow. So if he's able to develop those skills going forward, he's going to have a lot to do. But I agree with you. Drop the ball just slightly.
I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world. You're 14-0. You just faced a crafty veteran, an OG with a lot of experience right there. But I do think that people are going to be gunning for him maybe a little bit harder than they were before. Either way, I'm excited to see what the next test is for Tatsuro Taira. Finally, he at least gets something on the board, right? And this was at 130 pounds, so keep that, all in perspective. AJ, I made it my sleeper, and I think this one delivered. Denise Gomes is a problem, bro. She is a problem. And I want to know, how do you react the morning after? If you're Yasmin Jauregui, you're this highly touted, undefeated prospect. At least you were. You were 10-0 coming in. You're Mexico's next biggest thing in the strawweight division. And literally, I said it, bro. I said she's super technical. She's the better fighter. But Denise Gomes just brings an X factor to the fight that people can't prepare for. She got hit with a overhand that came from the hip, bro. This came all the way around, cracked her square on the jaw, and that was all she wrote. Well, I mean, how do you react the morning after if you're Yasmin Jauregui?
If you're Yasmin Jauregui, or at least you're Yasmin Jauregui's coach, you got tagged. They got lucky. It is what it is. It happens to everybody. Let's smooth up the defense. Let's bring that everything in. Let's work on the stuff that we can control and get things better going forward. Because it happens. It's a fight game. There's a puncher's chance for every reason, but we talk about it all the time, Derek. Not always does the best fighter win the fights, and this is a perfect moment of that because the dog has a chance no matter what. Denise Gomes came in, like you said, a missile from the other side of the world. But when you hit somebody on the button, you hit somebody on the button. And this was, I think, like an easy loss to swallow if you're the Hadagi camp, but a massive learning lesson to really test yourself and see how you come back from one of these ones. I'm always interested to see how these fighters handle their first loss. And I don't think this is one of those losses where you got beat up for 15 minutes. There's nothing you can do. You really broke your will down because this guy had everything to offer and you had nothing for him. This is one you got clipped. Let's get it back. Let's run it again. Let's keep that momentum going. I think this is a good learning lesson for Hadagi. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that was a really nice perspective that you took. That's like the mature, educated perspective to take, man. Because if my perspective is Denise Gomes just took everything that you worked for. All the hype that you had, it's all on her now. Now everyone's looking at her like, ooh, who is this? Is this the next thing out of Brazil? Like, we got to see what happens here. But I agree. Yeah, you got clipped. Nobody really expects the first punch to be thrown as a just missile from the hip of overhand. But if you're fighting Denise Gomes, you should probably expect that. So a big win by Denise Gomes. AJ, this is the one that I am proud of on the prelims. We said Alonzo Menafield, Jimmy Crute. If you are watching this program at the time of recording, you needed to throw money on Alonzo Menafield. We said it. We're like, I don't see how he could be an underdog. I guess, I don't know if he closed as an underdog or if it was even money, but we were basically heavy on Menafield. And he put Jimmy Crute out to pasture, man, pretty quickly. Don't have an update yet, but it did appear that Crute was like trying to retire after the fight in cage, and they just never gave him an interview. He took off his gloves, did the whole 9. So we don't really got to touch on that because it's unconfirmed, but Menafield, man, looked like a world beater in this one, and there's just a power level that is hard to overcome, especially when he took the Ngannou approach and just said, I'm just going to be tight and technical for this one. I'm not going to swing crazy. What'd you make of it?
This was a growth instance for Alonzo Menafield, man. We saw him evolve as a fighter, and arguably Jimmy Crute is the more technical fighter in this fight, on paper at least anyway. And Menafield showed up, did what he did, bro, and looked great, looked fast, looked faster than normal as well. It looks a little better in there, man. I'm excited to see where Alonzo Menafield, what work he's been putting in, because to be able to be consistently getting better and better like he is speaks levels to the volume this dude's putting in.
Well, remember, it's A to B instead of throwing big hooking, shots all over the place. Like, you'd be surprised how much quicker you get to the target. Vitor Petrino, man, world-class knockout artist, submits Marcin Prachnio. Don't really got to talk about that, but that was a big win right there. He got the arm triangle victory. Not a lot of people expected it, but this dude is good. Did you have any thoughts on that?
This dude was good, and I like this fight because it was a war from start to finish, Derek. Yeah, it got the submission in round 3, but there was a lot of back and forth. Both these guys had to be tested. And Marcin Prachnio was no joke, so the fact that Petrino was able to get it done spoke levels, man. Absolutely.
And then we move on to your sleeper, Cameron Simon, right? He gets the TKO win against Taryn Mitchell. Short notice, he did what he needed to do. What'd you make of it?
This is the one I was proud about, Derek. I'm always happy when the sleepers come through. And I was telling you folks, Simon, he's a dog. And Terrence Mitchell, arguably, short notice, but he put up a good fight. Is kind of foreshadowing the fact that Simon said DDP is going to come in and put work in. Looks like Simon is also that kind of dog as well.
Absolutely. Then we move on to the flyweights. Jesus Aguilar, man, this man comes in and just one-hitter quitter Shannon Ross. And you got to feel for Ross because he's been knocked out quite a bit in his career. But 17 seconds at 125 pounds, that should be an instant 50K bonus, right?
Instant 50K bonus. We talk about death touch all the time, and it's usually in the heavyweights, heavier weights. Man, you do it at 125 in 17 seconds. It's hard to deny 50K to the boy.
And that's crazy because I'm actually looking at the performance bonuses. He didn't get it. They gave bonuses to Du Plessis, Denise Gomes, and then fight of the night for Moreno and Pantoja. So that's terrible. My man got robbed out of a 50K bonus right there. But AJ, this is the one I feel the worst about because this was one of the few decisions on the card, right? But Esteban Ribovic, this man's performance got so overshadowed by everything else that came tonight. This was arguably the most impressive performance that I saw against Kumuela Kirk. He took the early adversity. He got taken down a bunch. Kumuela Kirk has fantastic jiu-jitsu, controlled him the whole first round, and he came in and just says, if you stand with me, you are going to pay. And he put it on Kumuela Kirk in a nasty decision victory. But this was like a beating. This was like a stop playing with me, stop taking me down. Fantastic performance. What'd you make of it?
Fantastic performance. And folks, this is why we tell you to tune into those early fights, whether it's early prelims or the first fight of the prelims, whatever it is, there's a reason they're on this card, man. And Ribovic made a name for himself because a lot of fans know Kumela Kirk, but not a lot of people were really clamoring for Ribovic. But homeboy is the real deal. Like you said, Derek, dug deep, got the dub. You'd love to see it.
12-1 in his career, and once again, if he could stay standing in these fights, bro, he's going to be a real problem. All right, that is your prelim pour over, folks. And then real quick, we're just going to hit a rankings review, and then we're going to get on up out of here. So, AJ, we're going to take a look at the UFC rankings right now, and we're actually going to explore a couple quick divisions. So to start us off, of course, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is the flyweight division. Brandon Moreno no longer champion. However, Alexandre Pantoja, this guy, I mean, this is weird rankings, right? Because it's like Figueiredo isn't even 125 anymore. Pantoja really was the number one contender. He's the champion. Moreno down to number one. There's two guys you need to concern yourselves with: Amir Albazi, Brandon Royval. So first question, I know we touched on it earlier, but just give a quick recap. Does Moreno get an instant rematch? If yes, all right, let's talk about the implications. If no, who gets it? Amir Albazi or Brandon Royval?
I would love to see Moreno get the instant rematch, and I think it'll be a lot harder of a fight. Who knows if it'll go the same way as all three have done in the past, but a quadrilogy is something that, you know, not many people like seeing, so I don't think so. And we were talking about it. I don't remember if it was on air or we were before the show, Derek, where I was saying Brandon Moreno is such a nice guy that I could see him just saying like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'll fight whoever. Don't worry about it. Like, he's just such a good dude, you know, it's such a great heart. So unfortunately, good dudes get stepped on in the fight game. So I think personally, between Amir Albazi and Brandon Royval, I think they'll give it to Albazi, but I think Royval has a little bit more of a wild card game plan that can go good against the wild card game plan that Pantoja presents. Of those two, or I guess of the three, the rematch or the Amir Albazi or Brandon Royval, which one do you see the most lucrative for the opponent against Pantoja?
Royval, man. Royval. He brings that wicked, unpredictable style. So he's the Yair of the flyweight division, damn near. And he's got wicked jiu-jitsu and can strike with his crazy Muay Thai. So he's got that kind of Pantoja-esque style, except less of a marauder and a little more of just kind of, you know, a flow fighter. But it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. But this division, once again, is now more open than it has been in quite some time. And then let's address here, AJ. So here we go. Middleweight division. Israel Adesanya just champ. Paeda's out. Same situation. Paeda's out of there. Your number one guy has been usurped by Dricus Du Plessis. The champ has beaten. All right, let's take a look. He has beat Whittaker, Cannonier, Vittori, Costa, Brunson, Hermanson, right? Yep, and then Gastelum, and yeah, pretty much, right? So this is literally all you have. You have Dricus Du Plessis. That's the guy. He's number one, right? So we're going to see that fight next. And then from there, the only other options is this guy waiting in the wings, Sean Strickland, who gets screwed royally out of everybody the most because he just has to play the waiting game. Either he goes and tries to do something at 205, or he just says, all right, well, if Izzy beats Du Plessis, I'm next. And, you know, but then it's tough here, AJ, because if Du Plessis wins, you would imagine Adesanya probably gets a rematch. I mean, it's tough. What do you make of this division?
Yeah, if Sean Strickland's playing the waiting game for his time to go with the belt, he might be waiting a couple years, and that's an eternity in the fight game. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Rodriguez gets the match next. It's what he's been talking about. He was even saying himself, I manifested this. This is my moment, not yours. Came in, tried to steal the show. I still think Izzy beats DDP, but that would be the best situation for Sean because then he's able to go back. Who knows? Izzy might leave. I don't know. There's a whole lot of things, but I do think DDP has solidified himself as a number one contender. It's rough for all the guys that are above him and below him because now you're just sitting there just in purgatory, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough spot to be in if you're in the middleweight division, and the featherweight division, and the flyweight division. It's just all of these divisions seem to be at more or less of a standstill to a degree, but that is your 60 seconds rankings review right there, folks. Now, moving on. Next week, we're going back to the fight nights, the good old fight nights. Holly Holm versus Maida Bueno Silva. So something to look forward to, I suppose, but it's definitely going to be a change of pace towards the high of International Fight Week UFC 290. AJ, just know we have a couple of bangers coming up. Tom Aspinall versus my man, Marcin Tybura. That's going to be a fun fight right there. And then after that, I do think we do have at the end of this month, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. Gonna be fun. Any last words before we dip up out of here?
Yeah, folks, if you made it to this point, you're the ones we love, and make sure you go share it with your friends. Go subscribe. Make sure you're hitting that button. You can see all the links down below. The biggest thing I always talk about when I'm preaching it, or I'm out in the streets, or I'm kind of giving the shameless plugs and all that stuff, come jump in, join the community. Yeah. Hit the comments button, hit the share button. If we're winning you money, like I said, my homie Scott, he hit me up. He's winning money. And you already know he's subscribed to the Bloody Water Podcast. There's reasons we do this week in and week out. Make sure you're hitting that button, sharing with your friends. Let's go, baby.
That's it. And find my man AJ on Twitch at twitch.tv/Santa Fe Bomber. But all the links are below. So if you want to follow us there, please do. However, there's only one thing that we ask before we depart, and that's that you hit the subscribe button and tell a friend to tell a friend. They need to subscribe to your favorite fighter's favorite fight show, the Bloody Water Podcast. Folks, that is it for us. Catch us on Friday for the preview show, Home versus Maida Bueno Silva. Until next time, peace.